So today, if you would please, I guess just to begin with, open up an email I sent you right before class started. It should be right there at the top of your inbox. We're going to do a workshop today. The main idea with today's class, now obviously, if you have questions, concerns about anything revolving around the class, I hope we can answer them. But in general, my idea is we're just coming back from spring break. We got to shake some cobwebs loose. We got to make sure we understand what we're trying to do in this paper, all that kind of stuff. So that's the goal for today. I even thought to forward it to Grace, which I almost never do. So I'm celebrating me right here. What you have in front of you, someone, obviously I will not tell you who because these are anonymous. Someone in your class got a little bit ahead of the game, I guess over the break. It was technically probably before spring break started, but you get it. And they sent me kind of what they were thinking of doing. Like, here's a thesis, I think. Here's like a paragraph, I think, where they try to explain what they're doing. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that today within the context of answering this question: what the hell are we doing in this paper? If we can answer that by the end of class, I'll be happy. So, first thing we got to do before we talk about anything else, you got to read this. Immediately after we read it, if you have questions, because you might, because this is an incident that's a couple years old now, we will answer those first. So as you read, if at any point you're like, what the, I don't even know what this is, that's totally fine. We'll talk about it afterwards, okay? And then we'll launch into what does this have to do with the paper. So take a minute, read through this, we'll talk about it. Take another minute if you need it. All right. To begin with, like I said, questions. For instance, I will offer you, because I had to look it up just to make sure, this all happened in 2014. So not quite 7 years ago now. It was September of 2014. This went down. You guys were maybe in middle school or something. So a hot minute ago. Does anybody not know what they're talking about, the incident they're talking about? Is anybody unclear on what's going on? Does anybody remember this? At least a little bit. Like one or two people.
I'm not sure what happened.
Okay.
I've heard the name before.
All right, so I'll give you a really quick rundown of what they're talking about. In 2014, it came out that Ray Rice, who at the time was a running back for the Baltimore Ravens, okay, he was pretty good at the time, decked his fiance in a casino or a hotel, I forget. I mean, it could have been both. And obviously people didn't take that very well. The Ravens, as this person points out, suspended him for 2 games. What they don't mention, I don't think, is then the video came out. Like initially it was just reports, like there was a police report and all this stuff. Then the video came out, which you can find, which I'm not going to show you. Dude is an NFL running back. He's like, I mean, again, I'm ballparking his measurements. He's probably like 5'9", 220. Like he's stacked, all right? And he knocks this lady out. It's not great. It's not great. Anyway, the video came out. People got even more incensed, especially when they're like, wait, he gets suspended for 2 games for this? Like, people felt like it should be a harsher punishment. So then the NFL came in and you get the quotation from Roger Goodell, the commissioner, sort of responding to that public backlash. Now, what they do mention in the paragraph, he was suspended for 6 games at that point, but of course he was released as well. No one re-signed him. If you don't get re-signed, that means your career is over. One little detail they don't mention, which got brought up at the time, I don't know how important it is, but I want to give you guys a full picture. He was, I want to say, like right around 30 years old, maybe even 31. Traditionally, for a running back in the NFL, that's kind of the end of your run anyway, most of the time. So some people said this ended his career, but it also kind of maybe just ended his career a little earlier than it would have, like, that part's less clear, okay? All right. So that's the gist of what went down. The first thing I want to talk to you about, and again, the big question for today is, what are we even doing in this paper, right? What is the point? What are we trying to argue? Their thesis. In today's society, already, right? I keep telling you our big question we're trying to answer is, what are we trying to say? What does the conversation around this thing say about us as a people, a society, a culture? They're trying to do that, okay? In today's society, you can be canceled in a matter of seconds. Ray Rice's experiences with this were deserved, but it caused the loss of his career, a troubled home life, and change in the NFL forever. I'm going to ask you, take a second, read over this. It's only a sentence. Not all of this thesis, even though it seems like it at first, really addresses the question we're trying to address. Again, what does this incident, the conversation around it, say about us as a people, a society, a culture? What part of it addresses that question? And then what else? I think at some point we're kind of talking about something else, actually. Take a second, see what you think. So I'll take an answer to either one. Where are we talking about, where are we trying to argue about some sort of societal symptom, I suppose? And then where are we talking about something else? Yeah.
Societal will be canceled in a matter of seconds. That would lead into
Pretty much everything up to that second comma. In today's society, you can be canceled in a matter of seconds. That's them answering the question we're trying to answer, right? Pretty good start. I have some issues with it, but that's a start, okay? Now, but that says that everything after that second comma does not answer that question. What are they talking about after that second comma? They're talking about something else. Really, 2 things, maybe. What are they addressing after that second comma, do you think?
they're talking about the specific example.
Yeah.
And I guess I feel like whenever they say, but it caused loss of his career, them using but kind of seems like, was it deserved?
They're vacillating on whether or not it was deserved.
Yeah, they're kind of on both sides. Even though they say it is deserved, they're kind of on both sides.
Well, and to me, to give this author the benefit of the doubt, I think they're just not sure whether or not they think it was, and it's a hard question to answer. Like, I mean, we kind of bring this up a little bit at times when we talk about this stuff. What would be the justifiable like punishment for this sort of thing? It's hard to have a hard and fast answer, right? Like, how many games? Put a number on it. Good luck with that, right? Should it cost him his career? Most people, I mean, some people would say absolutely. Other people would say, well, maybe not his career. Well, then it's like, well, where? Then what should it be? That's hard. I think that's what's going on there. They're saying it's deserved, but, well, maybe not completely, you know. But at the same time, that's kind of beside the point, right? Why do we not care? I'll put it that way, as strongly as I can. Why do we not care whether or not his punishment was deserved, especially when it comes to our thesis?
Because that's not what we're focusing on.
Good.
That's not the point.
I'm not going to say that question can't ever come up in your papers, because I don't want to generalize like that, but most of the time, unfortunately, probably not. If that gets you writing about something, do it, okay? But understand, your end product, it doesn't matter if it was deserved. That's not what we're talking about, right? What we're focusing on is the conversation around it. A lot of people at the time, and again, this would take research into it, felt like it was deserved. Fuck that guy, lose your career, whatever, like people were rabid about it, okay? And there's a flip side of that conversation where maybe they were a little bit more like the student where they said, well, he definitely should be punished. Something should definitely be done. But I don't know if it should cost him his career, right? That's kind of in general what the conversation looked like, right? So then what we would have to do again is argue something about that conversation. Whether or not the punishment he got is deserved is just not that important to us, okay? So that's a super long way of saying that's probably going to leave our thesis here, that question. What about the rest of it? Cause the loss of his career, a troubled home life, a change in the NFL forever. Those are your 3 prongs. You guys love those. That's going to be your 3 paragraphs. I know you already know that because you've written so many in-class essays. But we've already said that the question we're trying to answer about what this says about us as a people, a society, and culture ends at that second comma. So these 3 items that apparently are going to govern our 3 body paragraphs, they're not going to answer the question we're trying to answer. What does that mean? What should probably happen to those? What do those 3 things deserve?
Elaboration.
Huh?
Elaboration.
No.
I guess to be removed.
Yes. Spend no more time on those. You don't need them. They're not answering the question we're trying to answer. And it's painful to do that. I would argue less painful than whatever grades you would get if you wrote me a paper about those 3 things. Make those cuts during the drafting process. Because again, right now, they have the start to a thesis. In today's society, you can be canceled in a matter of seconds. We're going to talk about that now. That needs a lot of help, but it's a start. Everything after that is a misstep. That sucks to hear, but this is our first real day of working on this. I forget how long we have. We got a minute to work on it. Make those cuts now. Take that stuff out. Try again. All right. Before we get to elaborating on the thesis, I want to point you to the body paragraph. I think, well, I'll ask you guys first. There is a fundamental issue with this body paragraph, and there's all kinds of little symptoms as a result of it. But there is a fundamental problem with this body paragraph. What do you think it is? If you could describe it. Go for it.
Personal pronouns.
No, I'm sorry. I'm a dick for laughing. I didn't mean to. I'm sorry. It's funny to me because I've taught kids like you guys so many, like, you guys get laser focused on, this is a problem. It is a problem. Absolutely it's a problem. It is. I don't give a damn. There's such a bigger issue.
Keep focusing on the story.
What do you mean by that?
Like, what's not the one that they keep focusing on that thing you said you want to cut.
This is all information, right? And some of it we would need. But if you're writing me body paragraphs about the story, as you say, summarizing the kind of plot of whatever happened, you're not making an argument, right? You're writing me a book report. That's the problem. So really, this is not a body paragraph. This is a very long sort of summary of the incident itself. Which again, we talked about last time. You need a summary. Where does it go though? It's not the body of your paper. When you're summarizing whatever it is you're talking about, where's that going to show up? Does anybody remember?
Introduction.
Introduction. You can have a hook if you want one, like we always say, but then after that, you got to introduce the text. And in this case, your text is the conversation around whatever you're looking at, right? 3 to 5 sentences, something like that, right at the top of your paper. Give me some of this information, absolutely. But do it at the top so that afterward, you can actually make your argument, okay? Now again, a problem here is this is clearly more than 3 to 5 sentences. So they got some stuff to figure out. But I think they could do that. Right? One other small note, and again, we're going in a super roundabout way of saying we're going to have to cut this paragraph, and that sucks, again, to hear. But better now than after you turn the paper in. One other small point I want to make to you, though, that quotation is not worth quoting. He sent a lengthy letter. That whole thing, again, that's reporting. That's information. That's not quoting for language. There's nothing in that quotation linguistically where you're like, oh yeah, I could really do. No. That's quoting for information. You can paraphrase that if you need to, right? Anyway, we got all that stuff out of the way. We're basically, I say cut that paragraph, we're going to copy and paste it into another document if I'm the student. I might look at it when it comes time to write my summary at the top of my paper, right? This is almost like a rough draft of that summary. Cool. I need to trim it a lot. I need to figure out what I really want to focus on in terms of information. So I'll just move it into another document. That paragraph is not going to be in my paper, but it can still help me. The thesis, like we pointed out a couple minutes ago, a little over half of it we're going to have to just straight up cut. We're not talking about that stuff. So what we're left with, in today's society, you could be canceled in a matter of seconds. I say that's a start, because it is. It attempts to answer the question we've raised. However, we're presented with another problem. And I'm going to ask Sam not to answer this. I'm tempted to say not Jardel either, but I'll give you a shot at this. No pressure. I'm hoping someone else will chime in. But there is another big issue with our thesis, even though, as I say, it's a good start. In today's society, you can be canceled in a matter of seconds. That's going to be our argument, right? What do you think the issue with that thesis might be? There's a pretty big problem with that as it is right now. But that's going to be our argument. Think about it this way. How do you know you have a good argument? We've talked about this in different ways, but I don't think I've ever put it quite like this. How do you know you have a good argument? In your paper, in a body paragraph? You got to have some kind of bar you got to hit, right? How do you know? If you don't know, that's a big problem, by the way. I'll put it to you this way. If I came into class and I said, all right, for today's class, all we're going to talk about, the whole class, I'm going to try to convince you that in today's society, you can be canceled in a matter of seconds. What would your response to that be? Would you be super interested, or?
I mean, in this certain situation, you got canceled in a matter of seconds. But
Yeah.
in other situations, that's probably been like just as bad or worse, where they're still like living life. I mean, you'll hear Adrian Peterson abused his son, and he was still able to play. I mean, he's still playing.
Well, you guys are really bad about equivocating. For a bit of a sidebar, two very different issues, right? Like, and also even the word abuse is super interesting there because he spanked his son, right? Like it was very harsh, but he definitely didn't knock out a woman on camera, right? Like they're different. I'm not saying either one is okay, but I think, and I'm not saying anyone should go watch the video because wow. But if you haven't seen the Ray Rice video, most of us I think would agree, pretty different fucking levels. Like, Jesus Christ. Like he hits her and she's cold. Like it's kind of intense. So all I'm saying is we can't necessarily, like, they're similar, but you know. Anyway. And Adrian Peterson got canceled. He just came back, right?
No, he got injured.
Well, he got
He
suspended
gets
as well
suspended,
for
but-
like a year. Yeah, he lost a year. The only reason he was able to come back is because he wasn't as old as Ray Rice. Some people would argue, right? And because he's Adrian Peterson.
He's just Adrian Peterson.
Yeah. Yo, what's up?
Argument, kind of banal.
It's banal. There's that word I keep giving to you guys. You know that you can be canceled in a matter of seconds, depending on the circumstance, right? Now, whether or not it sticks, or in terms of duration, I mean, again, that depends on maybe what the specifics of what we're talking about. But you know that already. We all know that. It's a banal claim, which is a fancy way of saying it's not an argument that's worth making. But that's our thesis right now. So that's you telling me, I'm going to talk about this for the whole paper. And I'm going, awesome. Can't wait. By the way, if you have a very difficult time finding things to talk about, it usually comes down to two things. Number one, you're not making an argument at all. You just run out of information to report to me, okay, which is a problem. Number two, if you have an argument and you're finding it difficult to hit the length requirement, what have you, all your paragraphs are short, you're like, this assignment sucks, it's probably because you have banal claims. Whether you recognize it or not, your head will not allow you to belabor, usually, an obvious point. Because your head understands this doesn't need explaining. So everything gets really short, right? But let's start with this. What we're basically saying is, we got to figure out a way to make this thesis less banal. Make it more worth arguing. In today's society, you'd be canceled in a matter of seconds. We know that. All right. And this is the part I'm going to have to lead you guys through a little bit, just because, again, I remember it a little bit better. Was it 7 years ago? So I was in my 20s. Yeah, I was a little more aware of like news, probably. In my description that I gave you before, as I said, generally, there were two sides to the discussion. And again, that's what we're focused on, the conversation. One side, pretty vocal, was, fuck this guy, he shouldn't have a career after this, blah, blah, right? And it kind of seems like they won. There was another side, especially early, especially before the video came out, that was a little more like, we should let all the information come out. You know, you've heard this stuff before. They've already suspended him for 2 games. Maybe that's enough. It's a private matter. We'll just have to see. And then, as I said, the video comes out. That other side that's like, as we said, fuck this guy, gets even more vocal, gets even louder. They extend it to 6 games. He gets cut now. He's not just suspended. He's no longer on the team. And that ends his career, because no one will touch him, right? Even though he probably very easily could have played for a couple more seasons. Nobody will touch him, so his career's over. Because of the conversation, right? These people on this side were loud enough to make that happen. Now, but we understand, and again, I'm thinking out loud with you guys. I want you to try to go with me on this. We understand that just because one side of a discussion might feel a certain way, generally, right? That doesn't mean that everybody within that discussion completely agrees with everything everyone else thinks, right? You know what I'm saying? So I guess what I'm asking is, what I'm trying to figure out here in front of you and hopefully with you, what are we saying about us as a people, a society, a culture? I think we got a couple options. I'm gonna try to write them up here as we hopefully, not with that piece of shit I'm not. Why is that even up here? Jesus. For instance, they say you can be canceled in a matter of seconds. I mean, okay. Could we say anything a little more nuanced? Yeah, go ahead.
You could, regardless of your opinion on it, you could argue whether or not cancel culture is a problem, or you could argue one side, and I'll do the rest.
You trailed off a little bit. What? Something about cancel culture?
Yeah, like Avery, I said regardless of your opinion, you could argue on either side whether or not cancel culture is a problem.
Well, I mean, again, I hate to put it this way because even this is a cliche at this point. That's a little bit problematic because we're kind of passing a judgment. What we can talk about instead is how cancel culture works, right? It's up to someone else maybe reading your paper whether or not they think that's a good or a bad thing. But what we might try to do is diagram like a mechanism within it, the machinery inside of it, if that makes sense. Was your hand up, Georgia?
No.
Well, damn. No, it's not. But let's try that for a second. Let's spin our wheels for a minute. We got time. What might we be saying in this particular example, with this particular conversation, about how, I mean, it's called cancel culture, it's called other things. What are we saying about how it works, maybe? Because I do think that's what they're trying to do when they say you can be canceled in a matter of seconds. That's just super vague and it's super banal. So we got to get a little more specific. What does it look like to be canceled, for instance? Or how does it actually happen? You know, we sum it up with that one verb. But I think it's a little more detailed than that, right? How do we talk about how it works here? How did Ray Rice get canceled? We'll start with that. Because I might break it down like how it worked. We're not even trying to make an argument yet. You can just report to me if you like.
I think more people wanted him not to have a job than more people wanted to like forgive him or just let him have a suspension and be able to come back.
Maybe. Now there's an important assumption at the heart of your argument.
Yeah.
And that is numerically, like there were more people who wanted this outcome than not.
Or that spoke.
Okay, and that's an important distinction, right? The reason it's important is what we're basically saying now, there's two ways to think about sort of measuring. I wish we had a better, because this has like negative connotations. You hear cancel culture, you hear outrage culture, those make it sound like we're shitting on it, and we're not, especially in this case. I don't know what else to call it. I just wanted to say that. But the point you're making here is there's two ways to measure it. One is democratically, like voting, you know? More people, a couple thousand more, 1 million more, whatever, wanted Ray Rice to have a harsher punishment than did not. And again, maybe. And we would have to do research to test that hypothesis. But the other possibility, the one that, frankly, I would lean more toward a little bit, is, number one, those numbers are going to be hard to measure. They're going to be hard to measure now. They would have been next to impossible to measure back then. You're not going to like count tweets or something like that. That'd be very difficult. What's more likely is one side was louder than the other, right? And that's interesting. Because it did, just to tie it back to what we're talking about, end the guy's career. Like that happened. And what we're saying is it's entirely possible the numbers were about split, just for the sake of argument. But one side was much louder. Now we're saying, in this case that we're talking about, that's what mattered. Volume is what mattered. That's interesting. Is there a way, because that's kind of saying the same thing, right? You can be canceled in a matter of seconds, but we've gotten much more specific now. We're talking about how that actually works. In today's society, what are we saying about volume? Can anybody, even that term isn't great. Can somebody help me define that a little bit better? What are we saying about how cancel culture works here when it comes to volume, when it comes to public opinion or shaping corporate behavior, anything like that? Yeah.
Like who or what type of people has the voice, I guess.
I didn't hear the beginning of what you said.
Like who or what type of people have more voice than the other? Like who have more, their voice has more impact?
I mean, we don't have any information on like, you're talking about like somebody's identity. I don't know if we have that here. At least is what it sounds like you're talking about. But like, again, because the space we're in right now, this is pre-research. So anything we bring up, you would have to go look up. For instance, there might be somebody who has a guesstimate of the numbers when it comes to either side of the debate, right? Even those would be super fuzzy, but maybe you could find them. Another hypothesis I suppose we have is somehow linked to identity. I guess I have to ask you to define that a little bit, because I'm not sure what you mean. Are you not sure what you mean?
I mean, I am, but I'm just not sure to say it like,
Okay.
kind of how like, whose voice on the media, like, there's more people on this side voicing their opinion, there's more people on this side, like, and like, yeah, I don't know how to describe it.
Okay. I mean, I think you're talking about like bias.
Yeah.
In a way. Maybe in this particular issue, although again, this is why like some of you want to talk about movements, things like this, and I kept telling you guys, whoever you were, because I honestly don't remember right now, you got to focus on a specific incident, whatever it is, right? For this specific incident, again, especially once the video came out, most people agreed something needed to happen to this guy for what he'd done, right? Like, yes, people can have different ideas of what that thing should be, and maybe that allows for bias in a way. But in this particular incident, I just want to make the point that, like, damn near nobody thought nothing should happen to the guy, or that 2 games was enough. Like, I'm using my memory, but I don't believe anyone was like, yeah, he knocked that lady out, but you know, you're gonna do that. Like that was very. So there's less room for bias, I guess, is the point I'm making here in this particular incident. But maybe. I mean, again, these hypotheses you guys are bringing up, if I was this student in this class, I'll be writing this down right now. Be like, okay, that's a good thing to look up. It's a good thing to look up. Because maybe, okay? And depending on what you find, based on the 2 hypotheses you guys have raised, that would guide your paper a little bit. That would guide your argument, perhaps, okay? Before we can do all that, though, again, we're in the pre-research stage. We're talking about volume still. Let's make some assumptions. Let's assume the numbers are about even, because they probably are, to be honest with you. And let's assume, you know, allowing for human bias, which, by the way, enters into every discussion ever, because we're human beings. But allowing for that, because, for instance, what I wouldn't want you to argue either is something to the effect of some people are biased, basically. That's like, yeah, we know that. You guys are sidestepping this volume question. What are we talking about? Supposing the numbers are correct, or rather even. Supposing there's bias on both sides of whatever discussion is going on, but there's bias on both sides, so they kind of cancel each other out. What does it say about us as a people, a society, a culture? Hypothetically, at least, because we have to confirm with research. To what really seemed to matter here, one thing that really seemed to matter was the volume of the opposing sides. One side got louder than the other, and we're kind of saying that's what affected everything. I'll give you guys a start. It is the first class after spring break, after all. I cannot get past my grade school training either, okay? You guys left 3 prongs. I finally got out of that. But I can't get away from a good although statement. Although, now I've talked to you guys about these before. Traditionally, what you do in an although statement when it comes to a thesis, you give me an argument to begin with. But that argument is a little bit banal. And for the sake of working with what the student gives us, let's start with that. Although, Ray Rice. Right? Although he's an excellent example of how a person can be canceled in a matter of seconds, because he is, right? If this was our complete thesis, by the way, without the although, all of us collectively would go, yeah, sure. Banal. But the although forces us to say something truer than that. And most of the time, it forces you into a less banal state. Okay? So although this is true, he's an excellent example of that. What are we saying about volume here? We're kind of, I'm trying to lead you guys into saying that volume matters in some way. I'm just curious what that way might be. Do you think? When it comes to debate, classically, and I mean like thousands of years ago, like Aristotle type stuff, if you've heard of it, debates come down to making arguments, like we're talking about rhetoric. And sometimes that still matters. I'm not saying maybe that never matters. But in this particular case, I don't know that that's what we're really looking at. The information we get in this paragraph, there's not a lot of mention of rhetoric. There's not a lot of, well, this side made this point, this side made this other point. We just get, people were pissed, right? You don't usually make very good arguments when you're pissed. Sometimes you do. Usually, you're not speaking logically, though, right? You're speaking with emotion. That's what brings us back to volume. What are we saying about volume? Emotion, if that's a better term for you. And how it functions as a part of cancel culture, which is what they're talking about. Okay. Let's keep it simple at first then. Would you agree that volume is important? Okay, Jardel nods, appreciate it. Everyone else kind of stares, okay. I assume most of you are in the same camp as Jardel. Well, in what way? In what way is volume important when it comes to this discussion around Ray Rice? What role did it play, volume, of either side of the debate about what should be done with this guy?
Well, obviously the outcome of what happened to him.
You said something about outcome.
The outcome of what happened to him.
Yeah.
Respect to that.
Yeah. So we've already said that the louder side seems to have won, seems to have made their case more effectively. But again, we keep saying the louder side. I'm not saying I disagree with what happened. I just want to make that clear on video, okay? I'm not saying I'm like, Ray Rice was totally correct. Like, no, I'm not doing that. Because again, that's not what we're discussing. We're not at all debating whether or not what happened to him was deserved. That happened. We can't undo the past. Instead, what we're trying to say is, well, what does it say about us that it happened the way that it did, okay? So we keep kind of swirling around this idea that the louder side won. And we phrase it that way. At no point, even if you go read articles about this, because I've looked up a couple just to make sure I'm not totally wrong about this. At no point does anyone kind of say, well, these guys made the better claim, these guys, had the smarter argument when it comes to, like, this guy should be banned for life, this guy, that's pretty tame, actually, when it comes to, like, some of the things people said about this guy, right? You know how the internet works. So, what are we saying about volume? How does it work when it comes to making an argument online? Jardel at least agreed that it was important. No one seemed to disagree. Why is that? What is volume's function when it comes to argument online? Go for it.
Just kind of plays in, like whoever has more volume, kind of, like their opinion is stronger almost, like their argument is stronger.
If you can get louder, you win.
Yeah, only online.
Well, maybe.
Well, yeah, online.
So he's an excellent example of this. When it comes to online debate, you'd have another sentence where you basically said, because we're making an argument. An argument is something you have to convince people of. But right now, our pre-research thesis would be something to the effect of, given the discussion around Ray Rice and how impassioned everyone was and what seems to have happened, it seems like volume is maybe all that matters. Which side can be louder? Numbers are secondary. You need numbers to be kind of loud, right? But even if they're just, the numbers are kind of even, well then make sure your side's louder and you're going to win. You're going to sway corporations, you're going to sway public opinion because you're louder. That's an interesting point. And it's one, again, you would have to do research to maybe see if you're headed in the right direction or not. But you're going to talk about that throughout your paper, right? This question of volume. Who's louder? And you say it's confined to online debate, which for the purposes of this paper, you do have to focus like that for the most part. But I would also say, I mean, hell, you guys don't watch much news, do you? I assume not. I'll tell you right now, most news, at least popular news channels, is like 2 or 3 or sometimes like 6 fucking people that, you know, you've seen the boxes, people, and they're all just shouting over each other. I don't know how confined to online this really is. But yeah, that's a pretty decent thesis. And look, at the very worst, it's more interesting than this, right? Because it's more specific. Do you have a question, sir? No, I do not. All right. I want to try at least one more thesis because I want to show you guys that at this stage in the paper especially, you can go all kinds of directions. So I tried to raise this before, and I'm going to try it again now. We talked about the loudest side, right? That's a pretty decent thesis, especially for right now, doing no research. Most of you don't even know who Ray Rice is, okay, right? Totally fine. You're just like, oh, you know, I'll look into it. I'll see if that makes sense. Okay. Another idea, I raised this a while back today. I pointed out that when it comes to debates, okay, online debates, whatever, we generally break those into 2 sides, right? You can go all the way back to these Aziz Ansari example we had before spring break. A lot of people back to Ansari, like I keep going back to that newswoman who points at the camera and tells Grace, not you, I know, but it's weird to me. But it's like, you had a bad date, it's your fault, blah, blah, you didn't leave. You have those people. You have another side who is like, Aziz Ansari is a piece of shit. I'm thinking about Samantha Bee, right? The woman in the yellow jacket who's like also yelling at him on camera, basically, right? And that generally sums up both sides, initially, of that discussion, okay? I remember that discussion happening because I still am a big Aziz Ansari fan, okay? And I didn't really agree with either of those people, right? Like, I definitely thought that given what I read about what he'd done, I was like, that's pretty fucked up, okay? But I also didn't think necessarily, I wasn't like, Grace, it was your fault, blah, blah, blah. But I'm saying I felt like I was more in the middle, right? I was like, man, that's really, a lot of that's super not cool, but I don't know, for instance, to echo our guy here about Ray Rice, I don't know that it should cost him his career. I don't know that, like, you know what I'm saying? It's murkier to me. But I think a lot of the time, you don't tend to see that middle option when it comes to these debates, right? You're either completely over here or completely over here. There's no room to be in the middle, almost. Is that fair? General apathy. Good. Maybe that's the middle. That's the new middle these days. It's like, I don't know. I'm just going to turn to a puddle here in a second. Don't worry about it. Why do you guys think that is? Not the puddle bit. That's your own business. But like, in this example, Ray Rice, you're either, he should lose his whole career, or, nah, let's give him a second chance. There are a lot of people saying he should be punished, but he should have a second chance. That's kind of summing up the other side. Why can there only ever be two sides to a debate like this, do you think? And again, you may not know Ray Rice, but I guarantee you know some other discussion, super recent, in fact, where it is absolutely like that. There are two sides, there's no other sides. Why is that, do you think? Why do we do that? Because we keep doing that, it seems like. This might help us, it might totally sidebar us completely. Can anybody think of an example where something like this has happened? Maybe a recent one? I know of one, but that's only because I stupidly checked BuzzFeed last night. I don't know why. I hate that website. All right, the only example I have, and I can't keep them straight. They're not people to me. But one of the Kardashians, apparently, you get somebody that works for her, like was in a car wreck, and then the Kardashian, whichever one it was, went online and asked for donations to help with this person's medical bills. Anyone familiar with this? That's the only recent example I have. I think it happened over the weekend. Fuck. All right. What do you guys got? By the way, most people feel like she should just pay for the lady's medical bills because she is a billionaire. Which I get. But the flip side of that debate would be, but it's her money. I mean, like part of me is like, well, Elon Musk should pay my student debt, right? It's like, well, no, he shouldn't. It's like, well, he's not hurting for that money. It's like, I know he's not, but it's also his money, so not his fucking. Anyway, you guys can't think of a single example. Really? Wow. I feel like we're missing her today. She was super on top of this. She had all, I think she just lives on
Oh,
Twitter.
I guess like the kneeling for the anthem thing, because that was a big thing.
Not as recent, although I mean it's still here, but it's yeah.
It's died down.
Yeah. Okay. Pretty good example. Well, especially in that case, because it's either you should either stand or you should not make people stand, basically, right? That's the two sides. Okay. Everyone is familiar with that? Pretty familiar? Good. Thank you. You know, real talk, I was playing Madden over the break. I had to sign Colin Kaepernick as a backup because my guy got hurt. I drafted Justin Fields, so I have a scrambling quarterback offense. You guys are really on target today, so I'm gonna let you know. So I had to pick up Colin Kaepernick to run my offense. I'm running the Ravens offense.
Yeah, he's a stud in Madden.
Yeah. Well, it's a couple years on because I got Justin Fields, so like I play franchise into some years. So he's low, but he could run the offense. Anyway. I remember, like a year ago, could be more now, when they put Colin Kaepernick back into Madden.
Yeah.
It was a big deal. So people do still care about this. Why is it only ever two sides, do you think? You can talk about Ray Rice if you want. You can talk about the kneeling debate, if you want. Why do you think that is?
I don't really know, because I feel like the kneeling thing, there could have been a neutral side, because, I mean, people were saying they had family members in the military,
Yeah.
that's why they would never kneel, but also people that were kneeling had family members in the military.
Yeah.
So I'm like, you could be okay with just being in the middle. I think you just have to have two ways to argue.
Well, yeah. Okay. So you ended on a really smart observation. I want to highlight this in case you don't realize it. You kind of implied there at the end that something about how we're constructed as a society says that if we're gonna argue about something, there's gotta be two sides. And there's two ways to take that. Either, and this is the banal one, okay, you have to have two sides to have an argument. You have to have people agreeing and disagreeing. We know that though. Please don't argue that in your papers. But the other one is, maybe we can't handle more than two sides. See what I'm saying? Because there is the third. I happen to feel like I'm in the third option group where I'm like, I don't give a shit. Like, kneel if you want to, and if you feel like obviously you feel strongly to do something, do it. If you don't want to, it's a song. It's a bad song, by the way. Like, who has it on their phone right now? Who streams the national anthem? Anybody? No. Fucking cares. I don't. That's like but it's not. I think me saying that, people that were like, you have to stand would put me in the kneel group. You know what I'm saying? Like, I would get pushed into because like, I don't care if people kneel, like, I'm fine with it. That would. So what does it mean? And then I'll come to you, Sam. I know you have your hand up, I was all over it. But like, one idea maybe is for some reason we can't handle more than two sides generally of a debate. I wonder why that is. Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna kind of add on to that. I think about this before.
Uh-huh.
I always thought it's like people don't want you. Like, a lot of people don't want someone to be in the middle. They want them to either be with them or against them. And it's not like, and I'm not saying that's like, oh, everyone's like that, but I just think there's many people out there that either want you to be with them or want you to be against them. They don't want you to be third party. Like you said when you said like, oh, I'm kind of in the middle, you feel like people would put you in the kneeling group.
Yeah.
Because it's like, it's in a lot of people's minds, it's just kind of programmed that way. Like, they don't want to be in the middle. They don't want you to be in the middle. They want you, to have your opinion. It's almost like you're not allowed to be in the middle. Now, I guess you kind of elaborate on some of that. Like, and one argument that keeps popping up is like politics and stuff. People are like, well, they'll pick either right or left and run with every idea from, that party. And
Yeah.
they're like, well, why can't we just be moderate and not put me in one of these?
Well, you're talking about tribalism, right? That's a term that's come up over the past couple of years, because the idea behind tribalism is, we understand what a tribe is, but the notion is that I can effectively know which tribe you're in based upon very limited information, right? Depending upon how you react to the kneeling debate, for instance. I think most of us, unfortunately, would agree with this. I'll give you a little too much information about me. So, presidential debates get a lot more fun for you as you get older, especially recently. But in this past election, in the election before that, the way certain relatives, you may have experienced this, everybody's got that uncle or whatever, or the way certain people that you count as friends, right? All of a sudden they would post something on like Facebook or Twitter or whatever, you'd be like, oh, I didn't know you felt that way. Do you know what I mean? But don't we all kind of bring all kinds of other associations with that one thing? Do you know what I'm saying? They may support a candidate you do not support. By the way, as I'm speaking to you, I'm thinking of one person in particular who said a thing after the most recent presidential debate, and I was like, I knew it the whole time. Right? Like I know everything about this person all of a sudden. The fuck am I? Right? But we do that. As a society, we do that. I think that's a good pre-research thesis in a lot of cases, unfortunately. One reason we're so tribal is because, I said other people, I mean, you can say we, because we have to be able, like that's what makes it an argument. We have to be able to define you according to a single opinion. Then the bigger question is, well, why? Why do you guys think that is? We need a little more teeth to this. If I'm going to argue that we have to be able to define, I say you, I include me in that. Society as a whole wants to be able to define you according to a single opinion. You express one thing, we're like, I know what you think about all these other things, right? We do that. We do that. Why do you think that is? There's different possibilities. There's not just one possible reason. What's up?
I thought before too, I used to think like it was like an authoritative thing, like people almost want to have authority over the group. But
What do you mean by that?
like,
This is hard. It's supposed to be hard.
yeah, and or out of that, or it's kind of like people want to belong to something. I guess it's kind of like the same thing. People wanting to be defined.
Oh, okay. Well,
And not liking that you're like not fully with them.
one possibility is that we decide we know everything about a person with very limited information because it helps us feel like we know more about ourselves and where we fit in, and like a antagonistic sort of setup. Sure, that'd be one. What we're basically talking about, and Ansari talks about this. We talked about this in our first unit, and a little bit in the documentary. We make judgment calls. We make decisions, especially when it comes to social media and other people that we know, with very limited information. Like you might see somebody's picture, you might see a couple tweets, and you form a picture of that person, right? Like a full picture. You know all kinds of things about them now. It's like you read 4 sentences that they wrote months apart maybe, and you saw one picture of them, which might not even be them, by the way. Like, I know exactly who that is. One reason is because we're going to argue it makes you feel like you know yourself better. Because you know you're not that person, is kind of what we're saying, right? Maybe. What are some other reasons we do that, do you think? There's other possibilities here. Why do we as a society make such fully formed judgments? I was going to say decisions. That's not specific enough. Judgments of like people and ideas, often based on very limited information. Why do you think we do that?
To make us seem smarter than we might, like.
What do you mean by that?
We know more about this particular incident than some other people do. I mean,
Keep going.
sometimes people, they can learn a little bit about something and
Yeah.
pretty much just guess. And they might get close to being right about the rest of the stuff that they guess and talk about, but.
Okay. Okay. I want to sum up what you said and not twist it. I'm gonna try to do my best. So it's like, this is close to what you're saying anyway. Because I know you guys over there can't read this at all. Sorry. Because ignorance is not just allowed, it's often celebrated. Like, you're kind of saying, that's why I broke it into two. On the one hand, we allow for, as a society now, we allow for not having all the information. right? Like if you saw a friend of yours post a dumb thing, and maybe you DM them because you're not gonna, you're not gonna like throw them under the bus publicly. Be like, hey man, you should read more about that because like I don't think you know what the hell you're talking about. They're like, oh yeah, I read a headline. They're like, all right, we should read more of the article. They're like, all right, man, I will. Sorry, we allow for ignorance, which again says something interesting about us, that we just assume most people around us don't know what the fuck they're talking about, which is interesting. But you went further and you said, well, in a lot of cases, you can be totally ignorant, it's fine. Plenty of people will retweet it, plenty of people will like it, will comment, be like, exactly. And what are they basing it on? Well, according to your argument, they're perhaps also basing it upon their own ignorance. We celebrate it now.
Yeah, people believe what they want to believe,
And don't have to maybe look into too much evidence.
yeah, it's like, I guess like this last election with like the internet and all that stuff.
Sure.
People were just believing snippets. And
It was like that before.
I know, it's like, but I was more.
I know.
I was voting for it this time. So
Yeah. Well, no, I'm telling you, like, the big thing with the previous election, and again, they mentioned it in the documentary, was Pizzagate, which was Democrats, like Hillary Clinton, were rounding up children for a sex ring that they ran out of a pizza parlor in Washington, D.C. Now, that's a very extreme example, but it's also an extreme example that people believed,
Oh, yeah.
which is bananas. But according to your argument, maybe so, Like maybe ignorance is enough these days. Yeah. My favorite, and you guys won't see this as much because again, you're younger, but it'll make the rounds with you probably in about 10 years. I think it's one of those things that's just going to keep coming. My mother-in-law's friend, okay, posted a thing, and I don't remember the headline exactly. Look at me, celebrating my own ignorance. I'm just using my memory. But it was something like, it was like a super politicized topic. Like it was something like, the border wall should be extended, blah, 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 something like that, okay? That people are going to react to one kind of way. They're either going to be like, well, fuck you, or either like, yeah, like it's going to be one of those. But then if you read the article, it was kind of short, and it was all about how you should read articles. It's like, one of the first sentences was, whoever shared this with you clearly did not read this because like this is basically just to show how quickly something like this will get shared. Like so everybody commenting on it, well, some people were like, yeah, absolutely. And a lot of other folks were like, you should read that. You look silly right now, type thing. But the fact that it gets shared, right, kind of supports what you're saying here. So that's really all the time we have. We got about 10 more minutes, but I mean, let's be real, only 2 of you have talked to me today, so. You other guys were here, and I applaud you for it, but I'll let you out about 10 minutes early. I just want to make the point, to recap. We started with Ray Rice, and we started with a fairly banal thesis, but it is a thesis, and it is on topic. We talked about how the body paragraph we have, and most of the thesis we had, right, we cut all that, was actually off topic, which sucks, but if you're going to be on topic, this is the week to do it, But it gave us a start. One idea we talked about probably for a little bit too long was this question of volume. Maybe we research that if we're the student, okay? But then I asked you guys to try on some other stuff, and look what we did. By the end, there's other theses we could raise, by the way. We're not even necessarily really talking about Ray Rice in these, right? We're talking about tribalism, and we raised 2, and there's other ones, but we raised 2 very good possible ends to that thesis about tribalism, right? Because again, the question is not about Ray Rice or whatever it is you're writing about. What does it say about us as a people, a society, a culture? It's gonna get, if you do your job, bigger than that. Because that's what we're focused on. And just to make myself totally clear, and then I'll let you go after I remind you about your homework. You're gonna have to have a roadmap that talks about this. You're gonna have to breadcrumb me from Ray Rice to tribalism, or whatever you end up talking about, right? That's your analysis, though. You want to have to take steps. That means you're headed in a good direction. Questions about any of that? Okay. It's this point when I say a couple things. Number one, I graded your revisions for paper 1. They should be up. I don't know if you can see them on Turnitin. Actually, I forgot to check that. But if you got a new grade, it'll be up on Courseston for paper 1. Okay? Also, I graded second papers. Those you should be able to see. As a matter of fact, I believe a couple of you have already looked at them, the grades, the feedback, all that stuff. I did not write down the date, which is my fault. But you can revise your second papers if you want. We'll talk about this. I haven't decided how much in depth we'll go. We will talk about revising the second paper just like we talked about revising the first paper. I highly recommend it. I do not make it mandatory though. But you got some time. The date is on the syllabus, and that's the best I can give you. I'll write it down for next time. But anyway, that stuff's on, your grades on Courseston, your feedback's on Turnitin.com. I highly recommend you investigate your options when it comes to revising. Beyond all that, I also want to remind you, and then I'll cut you loose, this is bib week. You have 4 bibs. 2 are due today, and 2 are due Wednesday. I understand this is probably the first most of you are even thinking about this. You're like, oh shit, yeah, that was a thing. Just try to get them in today, I suppose, or something. All right, I'll see you guys Wednesday. Thank you.